Hey, problem solvers, we're going to jump right back into our read aloud about the Boston Tea Party because I just think it is a fascinating story. Whoop. So, last time we um, learned about how it kind of got set up, right? The colonists were real mad about certain taxes on tea. Let's find out what happens. So, chapter 3, don't drink the tea. In June 1767, Parliament passed the Townshend Acts. These acts added new taxes on glass, lead, paints, paper, and tea. In response to the acts, colonists in Boston and other colonies again boycotted British goods. Do you remember what that word means? Boycotted? They stopped buying them. In Boston, resistance soon turned violent. Residents threw bricks and stones at customs officers, and they dragged British officials through the streets. In response, 1,200 British troops were sent to Boston. They arrived on October 1st, 1768. They set up camp in the center of the city. Within a month, the violence in Boston had died down, but the city's residents resented the troops' presence. The boycott of British goods continued. By 1769, it had cost British merchants nearly 2 years' income. In March 1770, Parliament repealed almost all of the townshend duties, but it kept one, the tax on tea. The tax was meant to show Parliament's authority over the colonies, as word of the Townshend Act repeal spread. The boycott on British goods lifted, but the calm would only last 3 years. Soon, the Tea Act would stir up more tension. Tax on tea. In 1773, Parliament passed the Tea Act. The act was intended to help the British East India Company sell its surplus tea to the colonies. It actually made British tea cheaper than smuggled foreign tea, sorry. But it allowed the British East India Company to choose agents to sell its tea. For these positions, the company chose loyalist merchants who remained devoted to the British government. This gave these agents a monopoly on tea. It threatened to put many smaller merchants out of business. In addition, colonists were angered that money from the tea tax would be used to pay the salaries of royal officials in the colonies. This ensured the officials would remain loyal to the British government. It took away the colonists' power to influence local pol- political decisions. So let's take a break and come over to this pink square here. No tea here. Boston was America's most important port city, but tea also arrived in New York City and Philadelphia and Charleston, South Carolina. And ship contains in New York and Philadelphia. Sorry, ship captains in New York and Philadelphia refused to land the tea. Instead, they sent it back to London. In Charleston, the tea was unloaded, but it was left in a warehouse to rot. Let's go over here to secret tea drinkers. Many tea drinkers in America were women, and some supported the boycott on tea. They drank substitutes that didn't taste as good. But others continued to drink tea secretly. Helen Maxwell Reed was a young woman when the Tea Act was passed, and she remembered her father telling her family about the act. She laughed and told them not to drink tea in front of him anymore. Helen's mother put away the teapot, but she continued to serve tea when her husband was away from home. Sometimes she even served it when he was there. However, she poured it out of a coffee pot. Tea crisis. By this time, committees of correspondence had been formed in many colonies. These committees set up a network of communication between the colonies. They now joined with the Sons of Liberty in rallying the colonists to oppose the tea tax. They urged people to stop drinking tea. They threatened the agents chosen to sell the British tea, demanding that they resign. Agents in Philadelphia, New York, and Charleston complied, but the tea agents in Boston refused. In November, the first tea ship arrived in Boston Harbor. After meeting every day for more than 2 weeks, the people of Boston acted. They dumped the tea into the harbor. The caption on this photo says, oh, I'm sorry, on the picture, it's not a photograph. It says, the radical Sons of Liberty and more conservative colonists united in the Boston Tea Party. Sorry, guys, I'm so stuffy. My allergies are going nuts. All right, let's read straight to the source. Philadelphia farmer John Dickinson opposed the Townshend Act. In November 1767, he published essays that laid out his thoughts about British authority to regulate trade and taxes in the colonies. This is a direct quote. The Parliament unquestionably possesses a legal authority to regulate the trade of Great Britain and all her colonies. Such an authority is essential to the relation between a mother country and her colonies, and necessary for the common good of all. The question is whether the Parliament can legally take money out of our pockets without our consent. If they can, our boasted liberty is but a sound and nothing else. That's from John Dickinson, Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania. So consider your audience. Adapt this passage for a different audience, such as your principal or friend, and write a blog post conveying the same information for the new audience. How does this post differ from the original text and why? You're not required to do that, but you are more than welcome to. I'm just going to keep on reading. Chapter 4, Sparking Revolution. The British government saw the Boston Tea Party as an act of treason. If you don't know that word, take a moment to look it up. It responded by closing the port of Boston. It gave the king the right to appoint previously elected local officials. In addition, it limited town meetings to once a year. The British king sent more soldiers to Boston to try to restore British control over the colonies. Instead, the colonies united in anger. John Hancock was a Boston merchant. Closing. I know what closing means. Thank you. John Hancock was a British merchant who had become a leader of the Patriot movement, which supported resisting the British. On March 5th, 1774, he urged the people to arm themselves. Towns throughout the colonies formed their own militias or citizen military forces. They began to stockpile weapons. On September 5th, 1774, delegates from all the colonies except Georgia met in Pennsylvania. They formed the First Continental Congress. The delegates agreed to a total boycott of British goods. They sent a proclamation to the king. It listed the colonists' complaints against the British government. So if we take a look here at this timeline, a road to war. The Boston Tea Party was one of the key events on the road to war with Britain. But tension appeared between the American colonies in Britain long before it. Throughout the 1700s, acts of parliament were met by American protests and resistance. You can see it starts in 1733 with the Molasses Act, which added a tax on molasses, and it ends in 1773, where colonists in Boston responded to the Tea Act with the Boston Tea Party. I almost forgot half a paragraph. This means war. On April 19th, 1775, 700 British soldiers marched to Lexington, Massachusetts. The soldiers were to arrest Adams and Hancock. Then they were supposed to march to Concord, Massachusetts. They would destroy the colonists' hidden weapons and supplies there. Word of the soldiers' march reached Lexington the night before. Adams and Hancock got away, and the soldiers arrived in Lexington. They were met by a small patriot militia. As the two sides faced each other, someone fired. No one knew which side had shot first, but shots rang out. Men on both sides were killed. The Revolutionary War had begun. All right, I'm actually going to pause right there because I feel like that's a good cliffhanger. We'll continue this another time. Come back to Zoom. We're going to work on our social studies projects that go along with the book that you're writing. Okay? See you there. Bye.